In emergencies, wildlife rescue, care and rehabilitation in Victoria is broken. To some that may seem like a harsh statement, but it is nonetheless an accurate one. Whenever a disaster occurs, we see the same scenario played out. Our emergency services scramble and they, with the enormous amount of well-deserved respect of their communities, fight to beyond exhaustion. Day after gruelling day, true life stories of extraordinary bravery, compassion and resilience come to light. And we are reminded of just how wonderful a species of animal we humans can be. Those stories are always tempered and tinged with something else, the loss of lives. That no matter how hard people fought, no matter the degree of danger they placed themselves in to save them, they simply could not. There is a period of mourning, one that slowly fades for those communities that are not affected, but remains forever with those that were. Then we see the next phase, that of analysis. How could this have been avoided? Or could it even have been avoided? What lessons did we learn? And do we have the political guts to turn that light of introspection on and determine what we can do better and just go ahead and do it? Today I speak to this chamber about a situation that exists beyond the dreadful fires that crossed 2 states and consumed so much property and so many lives, not just human but animals as well. The fires merely brought this problem to light once again, and this time not to a local or even statewide eye, but an international one. The whole world watched in horror at the toll our most recent fires took on the lives of wild animals. They watched as help was seen to be needed, screamed for even, but was not forthcoming. At least not in a manner that was appropriate to the situation. Rescuers and carers, vets and darters, all stood by, ready to be called in by the government. And of course I speak here of the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. People with years, some with decades of experience. I won't say that they waited patiently, because anyone who is ready to offer their services, be they CFA, SES or any other agency, wants to get into the thick of it to help. It is in their nature, and I for one thank them for that trait. But wait they did, and wait, and wait, to the point where firegrounds were being declared safe, and yet they were still being told they could not go in and do what they do best. Meanwhile, an army of volunteers mobilised to get food, water and medical supplies to various NGOs, some local, some state, some national, so that when what would be in their minds an avalanche of injured animals came out, they would be ready. I made 2 of these mercy runs myself, taking medical supplies and food to Bairnsdale and Wangaratta. In the end, there was no avalanche of survivors, but merely a trickle. An estimate of over 1 billion animals were affected by the fires, and most got no help at all. I said at the beginning, wildlife rescue, care and rehabilitation in Victoria is broken, and so it is. The recent fires merely highlighted to the world a much broader, a much deeper problem. There is a fundamental break, an unrepairable break, in the relationship between the authority charged with this responsibility and those who do the work. Those who sacrifice family, work, downtime and personal comfort, safety and income to rescue, care for, rehabilitate and release our precious wildlife. This breakdown didn't occur overnight. It has been decades in the making. And decades long too has been the subsequent distrust of the department. It's not all one-way traffic, mind you. There are people out there who have done the wrong thing, and in so doing earned the ire of the department. But so deep is this rift that even an attempt to at least pursue some semblance of workable structure between the two in 2009 failed. Plans worked on by the department were never implemented, and the rift deepened. That distrust became so insidious that it has even caused the wildlife community to fight amongst themselves. So, we come back to that next phase I spoke about. What do we do now? The government recognises the need to protect our native animals, and I thank them for the many programs they do have in place and for the $17.5 million allocated after the fires. But that doesn't really give us a lasting, permanent answer to that question. The answer? Bring them all in. All the rescuers, carers and shelter operators, the rehabilitators and the releasers. Bring them all in. Make them willing and eager members under a new authority, one that recognises their work, values it, one that recognises and values their wealth of knowledge and experience, one that can mend the split in their community, because the animals frankly deserve better. I commit myself to working with them to help that happen. The government clearly has a key role to play in mending that relationship. I urge the government to initiate a public inquiry into how this mammoth task can be achieved, just as we have them for other important issues that affect the entire community. The bill I bring here, in order to conform with the restraints imposed by various other acts, does not contain everything that I originally wished to change, mainly because it would trigger issues around appropriation and other areas into which I must not stray. I am not, however, prevented from speaking about those points or from expressing my desire that the government hear what is needed, take up this bill and amplify it into what the community and our wildlife desperately need. Indeed, I want them to do far more. What I can bring today is a framework, one that establishes a committee that will provide ongoing training, accreditation and support, not just for the on-the-ground activities, but for the mental and emotional health of all these volunteers, because these people see death up close every day and feel its terrible sting far more often than they feel the joy of returning an animal to their home. This bill follows the volunteer model of so many organisations that have come before it, because after all, why reinvent the wheel? The lessons from various reviews and inquiries are evident in the evolution of these incredible organisations, and this new authority will mirror them in operation, with appropriately trained, accredited and dedicated teams of rescuers, vets, darters and others out on the search in emergencies when safe to go. Teams of vets at triage units, transporters taking animals to shelters, all under the command of someone acting as a wildlife incident controller, who will stand alongside every other emergency agency and who will be triggered into action at the same time as every other agency or authority. And this can be marvellous, but it can't stop there. This structural reform must stay in play outside of emergencies, because the situations involving wildlife rescue are myriad and extend to 24 hours, 7 days, all weather, all regions. I first thought about this some years ago, and I knew I could not be alone in thinking it. If I recognised the need, surely there are others, and I was most certainly not alone. This bill could not possibly be here today without some early and ongoing discussions with Tina Lawrence and the subsequent involvement of Lisa Palmer and Catherine McLeod, who gave life to a shared vision. Whilst I was voicing my views of how this would work, they were committing that vision to paper. I thank them for all the work they have done, just as I thank all rescuers, carers and shelters for the work that they continue to do. I don't bring this bill out of want or need to bash the government, or the department for that matter, but out of a need that I and others have recognised is of utmost importance. Because if we see our native animals as rightly coexisting, as indeed having a claim on this environment that stretches far beyond our short years on this continent, and not as pests that get in the way of our aims to exploit that environment, and if we value them as unique, of having lives and interests of their own that should be respected as an intrinsic right, as the rest of the world does, we need to step outside the casual disregard we have for their lives. We need to uplift them in our minds and our actions, and to learn the lessons that preceding decades have been screaming at us to learn. We need to adapt, to change how we value them. And that starts with changing how we value these extraordinary people that look after them, that already see things that way and commit themselves to championing their lives by looking out for them at every opportunity. The animals and these people deserve a system that is world's best practice, something that can be held up with pride as the model for the world to follow. I implore the government to do this work, and no, that is not enough either. I will go so far as to say, I beg you, as surely as we have already passed once-in-a-lifetime reform in so many other areas in this place, we must continue to do so, and it must stretch beyond our selfish, human-centric viewpoint. I commend this bill to the House.